Welcome to Rogue Bogues. This is episode 56 of the basketball series. Myself, Andrew Bogut, and Mike Procopio. What is news over there, Pro?
Bogues, how is the flood situation, by the way, out in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, it's getting a little bit better. It's dried out where I am, up north, but there's a town called Lismore that really copped it. It's the remnants of mud and debris is all left over, so they're in all sorts trying to clean up and everything. And our feds have been a little behind the eight ball. They haven't really sent much out. They've sent the army out now, and there's been some footage of the army cleaning up while recording themselves cleaning up, Pro. So they're making sure that everyone knows they're there, and they do some PR while they're down there, which is not. I don't agree with that. I think if you're going to help, you just go to help. You don't do it as a PR exercise. But they're getting the help they need slowly, but it's taken probably a little bit longer than it should have, Pro. So that's always disappointing.
Bogues, what person on the planet doesn't try to be a total media mogul and think that they're like, most popular person on earth and needs to put everything on social media? I'd say 97% of the world population is like that now. Everything has to be on.
Yeah, but look, country people are a little bit different. They don't really want the publicity. The locals don't. There's been a few people where the media have tried to interview and they've refused interviews. That they're there to help. They're not there to waste time doing interviews. So when you go down there and do that, they don't take it kindly, right? They think you're down there for the wrong reasons. That 20 minutes you're on camera, you could have been doing something else. And look, you want to raise awareness of what's going on. That's the media's job. But I think boots on ground, I agree with them to an extent. But yeah, it is. It's just everyone wants their clout and their moment and their shine, and that's just the unfortunate reality we're living in, Pro. But hopefully I'll try to arrange something down there basketball-wise in, the coming months. Hopefully try to get down there and try to help out that community. I think I'm in the works of trying to figure something out down there. So we'll see how that goes.
Perfect.
All right, let's get rolling. Now, Pro, we hit 1 million listens. So my 44 different serious podcasts that you give me shit about.
36, but go ahead.
Yeah, we've surpassed 1 million actually, because it didn't include YouTube numbers and a few other numbers. So we're doing well, and a lot of people out there, appreciate everyone supporting us, the hate, the love, whatever it is. We're starting to get a little bit of a following, which is good. And the more people you can share this to, the better. And I think people appreciate the brutal honesty from both of us and not being kind of too full of ourselves. We do swear at times. We do say controversial things, and I don't think we're too scared of that, Pro. So decent milestone along the way.
No doubt. I saw one of the tweets you had on one of the snippets of the show, and literally the whole thing was beeped out. So I might have to scale back a little bit because no one's going to understand what I'm saying anyway. But there was 3 words out of 90 seconds of film. So I might have to scale back so people can at least know what we're talking about.
Well, how do you think Steve feels, who edits the podcast, that he has to try to find 4 or 5 clips each episode? So that sometimes takes him 4 hours to try and get a 60-second space that doesn't have F-bombs and whatever else you're throwing out, Pro.
Good point. He's like the girl from Zero Doc 30 trying to find Bin Laden on a weekly basis, trying to find stuff that I don't swear on.
It's a mirage. But anyway, let's get rolling basketball-wise. Thanks for joining us again. Once again, cannot thank everyone enough for listening and sharing. And even I see a lot of you out there sending us stats, useful and useless, sending us fact or fake news statements. So we really appreciate it. Keep it coming. Team of the week. We didn't do it last week. We did it this week. Look, there was a lot of honourable mentions this week, Pro, for me. I hope you haven't picked who I have. You might have. But look, honourable mentions, Philly, Utah, Dallas just got a big win without Luka. Actually, I watched that game. They looked very, very good. Shout out to Finney-Smith. 2 big threes in that game late, which is awesome. Clippers are in my honourable mentions, and the Denver Nuggets until they lost. They probably had my team of the week until they lost to OKC, if I'm being honest. But I had to give it to the New Orleans Pelicans, Pro. Mm-hmm. They have had a great week. They are, they were 10, 11, 12 2 weeks ago. They've worked their way into the 10. 4 straight wins, all blowouts, Pro, 15-plus points in all of those games, and not against any slouches. I mean, Lakers, Suns, Kings, and Jazz. The Kings and Lakers, you might say, okay, fair enough, but Suns and Jazz, 2 tough wins, especially the Jazz one. They ran them off the floor yesterday. It was a brutal blowout. But I think they have an opportunity there to potentially even scrape out of that bottom plane, I believe, or at least get to the 7-8. I think as it stands today, they'd face the Lakers. I think they beat the Lakers. I think they have an opportunity to beat Minnesota. Clippers probably the same. I think it's a coin flip. I think they're really playing well. McCollum's provided a scoring balance for them. Ingram's actually playing better with McCollum in the lineup, in my opinion. I think, before McCollum was there, it was kind of Ingram had to, as far as he went, they went. Valanciunas and a few sprinkles of other guys, but it was kind of Ingram was the guy. Now he's got a guy that's probably the number one guy ahead of him, and he's probably 1.5, and I think he's kind of okay with that, and he's reaped the benefit. And Valanciunas is when he's shooting the 3-ball the way he is, if he knocks down a 3 or 2 in those games, they have an opportunity to win most of those games, and they start big too. They start old school big. The old Memphis Grizzlies big, So with Hayes at the 4, doesn't shoot threes at all. So it's an interesting lineup, but I like the way they're building probably over the last 2 or 3 weeks since the trade, and they're my team of the week, Pro. Who you got?
I got Dallas. 4 in a row.
Dallas Crony.
I mean, besides Boston, is there a hotter fucking team in the league right now? I mean, they're
balling. They're
killing it, man. I mean, they're killing it. And look, with Luka, without Luka, they're playing. I mean, they played well tonight, and they're just they're hard to figure out because they got one really great player, obviously, and then they've got all these other guys. Brunson's a really good player, solid top 3 player on a team. And then you've got like a bunch of just guys who fit their roles and they play hard as hell. And they're fun to watch. And they just, they beat the Warriors twice. And I mean, everybody beats the Lakers, so who cares? But like beating the Kings tonight without Luka is a big win. And I just think they're playing really, really well, and they're really hard to stop. I think obviously there's teams above them that will beat them, but I think they're doing what we talked about this like 8 or 9 podcasts ago about, really good teams beating the teams below you in sort of the same level. And I mean, if you're consistent doing that all year, or in a big period of time, I think you're a really good team. And I think they played really well. Boston was going to be sort of my pick as well, but I just sort of really like how Dallas is playing. And and they're
4 straight, 8 and 2 in their last 10. They're 39 and 25, 5th in the West as we speak. They have a chance to get to 4. They're a game behind the Jazz. Dinwiddie was a huge pickup for them, I think. He gets a lot of knockers, but I think that was a great move for them. It brings a secondary scoring ball handler. They can get a bucket in ISO. So, I like it when, Luka's off the floor. They go more to Brunson and more to Dinwiddie. And today we saw he was a threat. He was attacking. And I think that was a really, really good trade where I think it balanced out Dallas's roster and just gave them an insurance policy for the odd night where, Luka misses due to injury or foul trouble or he's not shooting the ball well. You can go to a legit number 2, number 3 option in Dinwiddie and Brunson, but Dinwiddie specifically because of the trade, and I think it helps them. So they're playing really well, and Sacramento had that game in the bag. I watched that fourth quarter, and they had it in the bag, and you just knew there was a run coming, and you just knew that you'd bet that Sacramento wouldn't sustain the run because they're a bad team. They're 13th in the West for a reason, but you knew if a run came, it would put the pressure back on the Kings, and they choked it. I mean, De'Aaron Fox missed a free throw late that would have helped them have a bit more of a cushion, but then Dodo came down and hit a 3, but they made some mistakes late in that game. But yeah, I mean, Dallas has a chance. They have a small ball lineup they can go to. Powell's having a great year for him, especially on the defensive end, and charges, block shots, contests at the rim. So I agree that they're a fair pick. So we won't take that as a crony pick. But the fact that you just said Boston was your next pick, we're starting to, there's some shenanigans going on, Pro. There's some bias here. Yeah,
that's a good point too. Two teams that one team that shit canned me, and then another team that I left, but in Boston. But I'll tell you what, I thought Indiana was the biggest tanker, up to this point in the second half of the season. Sacramento might have my vote. They're neck and neck for the two biggest tanking teams in the league right now, for sure.
Do you think they're doing it on purpose? Or is it just the Sacramento Kings?
I think it's the Sacramento Kings, to be honest with you. But yeah, but that one tonight, you looked like going into the fourth. I think they were up like 12. You thought that, all right, they're all good, and then I look up. I'm
up 8 with like 3-4 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Good for Dallas, man. Good win.
It was. All right, who's your bad team? Who's your team of the week?
Golden State.
Oh, damn it. I know. Yeah, go ahead.
Look, you got championship aspirations, right? And they do, obviously. They gotta play better than what they're playing. They got to play better what they're playing. They're missing Draymond, obviously, Wiseman, whatever. But like they're missing Draymond, such a huge part of that team. And it just goes to show you how valuable he is to that team on both ends of the floor, as far as, obviously his defense, but his passing, his screen setting, his just like, toughness factor that just, they need it. They need that dog. And they don't really have that dog in the lineup. They've got talented, great players in the lineup, but they don't have that dog, that X factor. And I think he's that guy. He's the Xavier McDaniel, on steroids from the 90s. Like, he's just that tough guy that gives them that like extra kick. I mean, they lost 3 straight, and 3 out of I think they've lost 7 out of 10. They're just not in a great place. Look, they need him back. I don't know, Bogues, you probably know more than I do on that. I don't know when he's coming back, but they'll be fine, but they're not playing really good. They're not playing great at all right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, same. I think there's a mix of things. I think Draymond Green's value now has been solidified. He got a lot of shit last season or the season before. It was last season, right? Which was a bad season. Last season, right?
Last season.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I think he provides so much for them that doesn't show up on a stat sheet, as we've spoken about at length in numerous different podcasts. I think Clay's still finding his legs. I still think he's a little bit up and down just because he's been off for 2 years, man. Like remember we spoke about the emotion and the momentum he's going to get that first week or so of just being back and being pumped to be back, and the body's going to feel great. And then week 2, 3, 4, soreness. Holy shit, my hammies tightening up, my back. Oh, what's going on? That's normal. And Clay's one of the best in the league at just playing the hand he's dealt. You can never really tell what's going on with him, but I can guarantee you he's probably, spending extra time in the ice bath, getting extra recovery in, trying to do those things, because he's been out 2 years. No one can conquer that, right? So I think he's finding his legs. I just think they're also in the dog days of the season. They're supposed to be one of the championship favorites, at least after about a month into the season. Most people had them as a top 5 contender. And I think this is the dog days. They've been through this before, which is why I'm not too concerned. They had to get team of the week for me just because of their record, and they've let some games slip. And probably the way they've lost, I think defensively they've been real bad. I just saw Steph made some comments that he's asked the coaching staff and Steve Kerr to change some things defensively. And Steph's really not a guy that kind of goes out and requests things very often. So when he does, your ears perk up, you listen, because he doesn't do that very much. Usually it's coach or GM going to him and asking. He's not going to come to you. So I think they have some issues there. And I think Jordan Poole being in and out of the lineup, like starting, not starting, there were some comments about how he's got to deal with it and figure it out. I think that's messed with the young player a little bit as well. They have found some gems in Kuminga. So I think they've, Andre Iguodala being out too, I think he's an underrated out. Even though he doesn't play a lot, I think he's a real calming influence for them off the bench. He plays that point forward role off the bench. They move Steph to the 2, Clay to the 3. And I think he provides kind of a lot of that veteran kind of grit and what you need to do. Hey, you're in the wrong spot. Hey, let's get Steph another shot, So I think they're just missing all of that. So it's not the end of the world for them because the injuries have taken their toll. But yeah, I would agree. They have to play a little bit better and show us a little bit more out there. But I think they'll, it's March 6th right now. I don't know when Draymond's going to be back. They're saying, it's going to be later than sooner, closer towards the playoffs. But I think they're going to start to pick it up. They'll start to get healthy, like every championship team that's been top 2 in, for 5, 6, 7, 8 straight years. they're going to all of a sudden find their health in April, I believe, and they'll be okay. But yeah, definitely a bit of a concern there, bro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with all of that. And with Clay just trying to find himself and trying to find some rhythm and just some consistency. And, I'm sure he's going to be banged up a little bit. He's getting a little bit older, plus with what he's coming back from. And, they've had a couple other guys out here and there. And, Poole's going to find out that, look, like in this league, and it's not going to be the last time this happens, sometimes your minutes are inconsistent. And, probably for a while he's been consistent in college and high school about being consistent in his roles. Sometimes when you're a young player on a championship level team, your role isn't solidified, and it's not. It really isn't consistent, especially when you have guys coming in and out of the lineup with injury. He's going to have to find that if he really wants to, be a high level player in this league and continue to make it and be a solid starter for a team and things of that nature. They'll be okay. To me, Bogues, if you're playing really well at the end of March or beginning of April, that's when you either worry or you don't worry, depending on how you're playing in that chunk of time. And they're getting a little older. It's not 5 years ago anymore. It's injuries take a little bit time, longer to heal. Things happen, especially when you're not consistent with your lineups. And there's a lot of sort of things they got to work out before, little things that they got to work out before the playoffs start. They'll be fine. But it's always challenging. That's probably the fun part of it, trying to figure the whole puzzle out.
And then their rotations have changed a little bit. Toscano Anderson's kind of completely fallen out of the rotation, which was interesting. He played 32 seconds against Dallas. Moody's come in and he was 3 for 3 last game for 3 against Dallas. They're about to play the Lakers. They should win that today. But maybe they found something in Moody, so they found a few pieces on that bench. Maybe they can crack the rotation, but they're searching. And, when Steve Kerr goes that deep into his bench, he went 11, 12 deep, that he's searching too. He's looking for something, energy, a spark, this or that. So they'll be fine long term, but yeah, a bit of a concern for them, and they need Draymond Green back. I think he's a Band-Aid fix to a lot of this. All right, moving on. Rick Barry, Soundbite. I'm going to play this. It's about 2 minutes long. I want everyone to have a good listen at this, and then we're gonna break it down. So here is, if you haven't heard it, here it is.
We're talking about the 75.
Well, we simply get the officials to call it by the rule book.
Okay.
Stop the traveling. Stop the carrying the ball. Stop the moving screens. Call the damn game according to the rule book, because players will adjust. If you're going to allow them to get away with it, hell, of course I'll keep doing it. Call the game according to the rule book. It's such an advantage to let a guy carry the basketball or take an extra step. That's ridiculous. Or a guy to move on offense. I mean, why are you giving all this advantage to guys? They're breaking the rules. Call the game according to the rule book. I charted a game a few years ago, Chicago, Atlanta. 59 moving screens weren't called. 59. That's insane. I can't even tell you how many times they carried the ball, how many times they traveled with the ball. It's pathetic. For me to watch this game the way I was taught how to play the game, and to watch this and what they allow to let go, it's an embarrassment. I'm sorry, it is. It's an incredible game. The athletes are incredible. What they can do is incredible. But they're getting away with murder. And I blame the officials. Call the damn game accordingly. And it's the same thing with screens. I'll give you a good lesson here. Okay? You hear even the coaches, when I'm hearing the coaches saying, well, he didn't set a very good screen. Trust me, guys, a player doesn't set a screen. Doesn't say when you have to set something, it implies that you need to do something. You have to set a screen. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility, as my teammate for Clifford Ray, let's say, is to learn to put yourself in the most advantageous position to allow me to take my man and run my man into him, thereby making him a screener. He's a stationary object. He only becomes a screener if I run my man into him. So if I do a crappy job of setting my man up and he's going to come over the screen, what does he think? Well, I'm supposed to set a screen. So he moves a little bit to try to what? Set a screen. That's a violation. It's a moving screen. It's a foul. Officials don't call it unless you take a guy's head off. That's the problem with the pick and roll play. They don't run it properly. They don't understand it properly, and even the coaches are talking inadequate or not intelligently about it.
So, bro, what are your thoughts?
I love Rick Barry, man. I think he had a lot of great points about the game as it's inconsistently officiated, and the travels for sure, the fouling for sure, the screening. What are your thoughts on the screening part when he was talking about that?
So here's my thing. I think I totally agree with Rick Barry about players adjusting. We've had this discussion. You tweak a rule, within a couple of weeks, players are going to adjust. They're going to bitch and moan for a week or two, whatever the rule is. Like, for instance, this season, it was the rip through trying to draw a foul when a guy's arm's out. They adjusted very, very quickly, so they're going to adjust. I agree with the traveling, and I agree to an extent with the moving screens, right? Where I disagree is, I think as an avid screen setter, I believe I was an elite screen setter throughout my career, and I was taught by Rick Majerus. There is an art form in setting a screen, pro. There is. I really think there is, and I agree with Rick that it is set a screen. The wording set, you must be set. But you can get to the point of your screen. If I'm running to screen you, pro, as long as I stop moving the split second before I hit you, it's legal because I'm set, right? So there is an art form in sprinting into a screen, setting it nice and wide or as wide as you can. One thing I used to do was as soon as a player laid hands on me, so you're coming off a screen and the defender grabbed me, it gave me a free pass to move. Right. So what I would do is I put my hands up in the air and I would just back up the same amount as he's holding me, so it looks like he's pulling me. So there's art forms in setting a screen, but I agree with him. Look, when I was with the Golden State Warriors, bro, whenever Steph or Clay got hot, the screens that I would get away with were bonkers. I'm saying I got away with. And don't blame me. People used to be like, oh, I hate that Bogut, he sets moving screens. Hell yeah, I do. They're not calling it. So I'm trying to win the game at all costs. If I can scratch tooth and nail, I'm doing whatever I can. 1%er, if I have to untie your shoelace, I'm doing it, whatever, right? And I know if Clay or Steph have hit their last 3 threes, I'm doing whatever I can to get them open. It was crazy what I was allowed to do. When they knocked down 3 threes, the crowd's going crazy, the announcers are going crazy, we're making a run. I could literally clothesline a guy, the refs wouldn't call it because the refs were in the game. Like they were part of it. They were part of the emotion and the feel, and and Draymond does the same thing. He knows there's times where I can just lay his guy out. They're not going to call it, especially in a tight game. And that's what I agree with Rick Barry. I think there needs to be a happy medium with the screening. The travel things, the carrying thing, the travel thing, the no bad footwork just because you're a superstar. Like, how many guys do we see on a full court inbound? Other team scores, they inbound it to LeBron or Russ. They take 4 steps before they dribble because it looks cool, it's casual. I can just. So I agree with all that. I'll probably be at 85, 90% agreement with Rick Barry. I just think the 10% when he's talking about screening, I think there is an art form in it. But it all comes down to how the game's officiated and referees, pro. It's
got to be consistent, Bogues. Like, my big thing is, my biggest pet peeves is traveling, splitting feet, and 3 things. On the travel, splitting your feet, meaning you catch it on the perimeter, your right foot goes forward, your left foot goes back, and then you put the ball on the floor, not holding a pivot foot. I can't stand that. I can't stand when they gather and they could take 19 steps before they gather and then take the layup. Yeah. I don't like that, and I don't like the step back rule. The step back rule is very inconsistent. That's the thing. It never was the gather. It was you pick the ball up, you get 2 steps. It wasn't a gather. It wasn't what have you. Those are things I don't like. I don't like the following situation, Bogues. The rule is when, a defender on the perimeter especially, or in the post, when you face somebody and you drive to the basket, once they start their drive, you have to have hands off. You can't have one hand holding, one hand up. You have to have both hands up, and you cannot have a hand on that offensive player. Some players do, some players don't. I break down 2 hours a day on foul versus not foul to teach the game better. And it's inconsistent because some players can, some players can't. And my clients, when I talk to them about, hey, look, you got to show hands, he goes, look at this clip. This player has one hand on him holding as they're driving, one hand up. I said, you have to show the referees your hands, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And I just think those things need to be officiated way more consistent. And to me, it's just frustrating as a teacher, but maybe as the fan, they don't really give a fuck, and I understand that. But to me, That's where I'm at. And the screening thing, you're right, it is an art form. I'm a big screening fan. I think, getting hits on screens, or at least forcing that that defensive player to veer on a wide angle to avoid your screen and giving the ball handler or the shooter an advantage. I think you're a big time part of the team offense, even if you don't touch the ball, if you're a great screener. And I do agree with your sentiment on it, but I just like how he sort of look at the game. It's just too inconsistent. They're getting away with too much. And it's just hard as a young player. To me, it's hard because, like, if you're trying to work on something that they don't call for James Harden, and you go, well, James Harden, they don't call it for, so I'm going to continue to do it, and then the ref starts calling it for them. They're like, what the fuck? Like, it's hard.
Especially a young guy.
Yeah, it's hard.
A young guy coming in the league.
But nobody cares, folks. Like, you care, I care, but the casual fan doesn't give a fuck, to be honest.
That's what I mean. So it's almost like a get off my lawn type rant by Rick Barry. That's what most people, the young fans of the NBA, will equate it to. But it's the NBA has become, it's not WWE-esque yet, but it's become more entertainment than basketball. And that's what's disappointing about it. To your point about not being able to have an arm on someone when they're driving, well, all of a sudden, if that's an all-defensive player holding that player, he'll get away with it because of his resume, his stature. If it's James Harden driving, he gets a little questionable bump. It's going to get called most times. But if it's Joe Schmo, 13th man, who just got some in, it's not going to get called. And I think that's where purists of the game get frustrated. It should be the same rules for everyone. A travel's a travel, a carry's a carry. The moving screen thing, if you're saying, okay, way too many moving screens, tweak it. Players will adjust. I'd adjust. In games, I'd usually know in the first couple of minutes how they'd call it. And then you kind of have to adjust along the way. And then you might try another sneaky one in the third and see if they call that. And then you adjust. But I think Rick Barry's got a point. I mean, he'll get some shit for it. He'll get some pub for it. But it does, as a purist of the game, I'm not watching it for the halftime show. I'm not watching it for the windmills. I'm not watching it for the cheerleaders or who's sitting front row. I'm watching it for the game. It is hard to watch at times because the fundamentals go out the window. And then, if you're coaching an 8, 9, 10, 15-year-old kid, he's like, hang on a second. James Harden could do that 3-step back, side step, and it wasn't a travel. Why can't I do it? And they try to do it in their local leagues. It's like travel. And they're getting frustrated. And some of my idols doing it. And that's where it's tough, where the NBA is entertainment. It's probably 70-30 entertainment at this point, I think. That's probably my ratio. I don't know what yours would be, but I think it's about 70% factored towards entertainment, 30% basketball.
It's right around there. It's getting to the to the WWF for sure. It is mostly entertainment. Let's be honest, it's a ratings money deal. Yes, there are guys who love the game. There's a slew of guys in the league that love the game and want to play, and they love to compete and play. But for the league itself, I think it's all about money. It's all about what's the best value for the fan that's watching, that's spending money, that's clicking, that's betting on the games. Like, what's the best product for them? And it's very drama based. It's very, National Enquirer, TMZ based on that stuff as well. And that's what they want. And let's be honest, the game is flooded for the offensive player. The defensive player is fucked. If it's not, there's really no advantage for the defensive player. I don't know how many, what rule do you think gives the defensive player the advantage at all? Maybe the verticality rule, where you go straight up and hit the offensive player and make contact and no foul call if you go straight up and down. But there's really not much, Bogues, in my opinion. They want. Yeah,
but even that rule, pro, if the offensive player, like I go verticality, which happened to me a lot, the offensive player goes straight into my torso, my body natural inclination is I'm going to hunch because say you get punched in the guts, you're going to hunch over. So then I get called for a foul for not going straight up, and I'm trying to explain to the referee, like, he basically kicked me in the nuts with his knee or kneed me in the stomach. Like, so it still favors the offensive player.
Yeah, it should be, the verticality rule should be, verticality before the hit. And then the hit, then if you hunch or whatever because of the hit, then it should be the defensive guy.
On. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. There's so many little split-second decisions referees have to make out there, but I think they started off well this season. But as we've said, I mean, right when we said it last week, Harden and Embiid shot 40 combined free throws. was going back. It's going back to the old school way of, or the last 3 or 4 years of refereeing. So I don't think most fans that watch the game on a daily basis like it. I think it's more that casual fan. I look at a stat sheet. Even the bettors, you mentioned betting, they wouldn't like it. They'd want the travels called, and because it can cost them money. You know, those plays can cost them money. So anyway, I thought it was a good little rant from Rick Barry, one of the legends of the game. He definitely has his point of view, and he definitely is not scared to share it. So we appreciate that, and we'll. Nothing's going to change, so I'm not holding my breath, but it's a good discussion nonetheless. Injuries and movement, Pro, a lot going on. All right, Bradley Beal's the first one I want to talk about. He was quoted as saying, fair to say I'm leaning towards signing with the Wizards. Now, Pro, I've heard a pretty big rumor, Pro, from some people, you know, that are pretty close to the situation in the NBA. Big three to Philly. Brad Beal, just trying to get to Philadelphia in the offseason to team up with Harden and Embiid. Philly's desperate, obviously, to try to get off Harris anyway. They have been for a while, and I think they're, you know, even more desperate now to free up that cap space somehow. It most likely will have to be a sign and trade with Philly, but don't be surprised if a big three forms in Philly, Pro. That's the word on the street.
I mean, it's a good idea in theory. The only issue with the Harris deal, if I'm Washington, do you really, if you're going to give up Beal, you probably want a younger player. You know, you want a younger player to sort of start this thing with on a rookie contract, rookie scale deal, or a bunch of picks. You're going to pick up Tobias Harris that has 37.6 next year and 39.2 in 23-24 left on the deal. If I'm them on the sign and trade, the only way that I'm doing that is if I get a boatload of picks from Philly, you know, to move that deal, and I'm getting Thibault or someone else. And I don't think Philly could really afford to give up many more assets if they're going to give up Harris and a couple other people, because you need people to play defense. You need some other guys. Now, obviously, if you get Beal, you get Beal. I think this move has to go through like Oklahoma City, you know. But even if they do, because they got a boatload of cap, even if they took the money on and they took his $37 million on, they don't have the – it's not like – see, for a casual fan, it's like, oh, yeah, well, get rid of Harris and you could use his $37 million. It doesn't work that way. You got to be 37 under the cap to sign him, and they're way over the cap with the guys that they have there now. So it's going to be really hard. Like you said, it'll have to be probably a straight sign and trade. And, you know, I don't know. I don't know what Bradley Beal does. I don't know his contract situation as far as he's, you know, super max, because you got to stay with the same team to go super max. I don't think to stay in Washington, he probably doesn't want to do that. But, you know, they always say they do. But that's interesting that you say the whole deal with Philly. That'll be interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, because the big three works so well in Brooklyn for Harden. So he wants to try it again in Philly.
It's great. It's great.
Maxi's playing too well to be included in that deal now, right?
Yeah. I think Maxi. The
value's too high.
Yeah, him and Thibault, they really max. I think Thibault will go if push comes to shove. I would say Thibault goes, but they really need defense too, though. Like if you get who's gonna guard people if you get Harden, and I mean they don't really care. But if you have those three guys, who's gonna defend? So they need elite defenders.
Danny Green.
Yeah, Danny Green. Yeah, if you went to
you're playing KD. Yeah, I mean, Thibault's your guy. But yeah, just an interesting one. I mean, 1% chance, 2% chance happening, but it's been discussed. So we'll see how that goes. Oladipo, totally forgot. Back soon with Miami Heat. They're balling, playing real well. They've had injury issues early on, and he still hasn't played a game for him. So that's a big inclusion. Does he even come back and start immediately, Pro?
I don't think so. I think they'll ease him in, you know, with the whole load management deal and all that. It's he's going to be a big part of things, though. Like he could be a big part of things off the bench and then work his way in. You know, sometimes when Duncan Robinson or somebody's struggling, or you know, you could always throw him in. Imagine like coming off the bench with him and Tyler Hero, though. You know what you can do with that lineup, and I think they'll be smart with it. I don't think they'll just throw him. It's not like they're a bad team with it. They need a playoff push. They're obviously going to be one or two probably coming into the playoffs. So I think it's a great ace to have in your hand. And you could play it and basically ease them in and see what happens in the playoffs. I mean, that'll be interesting though with the way they're playing, and then you throw Oladipo off the bench for like 15 to 18 minutes a night to start with. We'll see where that goes. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I totally even forgot they were missing anyone. So big inclusion for them. Michael Porter Jr. to be cleared within the next week or so for full court activities and contact, and should be back sometime in March. So that's big for the Nugs. They've held it down. Credit to them. They're much like the Clippers. Those two teams have been really, really good considering the hand they've been dealt with injuries. And there also is a rumor that Jamal Murray, they're saying strong chance to be back in time for the playoffs. So. Look, I don't think Jamal will be able to give him as what he has in the past immediately. It's going to take him some time, and you're always cognizant of coming back to a playoff series because that intensity lifts. You don't have time to ease back from an injury, so we'll see how that goes. But those two inclusions for the Nuggets, considering where they're at, they're still in the mix, would be massive for them, Pro.
Yeah, that 4-5-6, that battle for 4-5-6 is going to be pretty interesting with Dallas, Utah, and Denver, and you throw that in. To be honest with you, Bogues, to me, I know you're way more competitive than I am. If I'm a team, I'm going to be conservative with it, like especially with the Clippers and Denver, like with their injury deals. I'm not going to rush those guys back. I know what I have going into next year. I'm like, you know what? Let's just battle through. I think it's good for our other players to get a lot of minutes, see where they're at, and go there. I'll play those guys if they come back before the playoffs or into the playoffs, but I'm not really going to rush them back at all. I'm not worried about winning series because it's too much on the line. God forbid something happens, knock on wood, to see, something happens early. But I think they're in a great spot. Like you said, Denver and Clippers both holding it down. You probably thought, and I thought with those injuries that those guys would be 9, 10, 11, 12, in the West instead of 6 and 8. It's pretty cool to see.
Especially the Clippers. Like, the Nuggets still have Jokic, so the Clippers just have been decimated. But they've done a good job. The only other one I had, or two other ones I had, were Deandre Jordan. We called that one. He got waived, I think, too late because it cost the Lakers another $4 million, I believe. If they would have waived him earlier, they would have saved some money, but I don't think they care too much. But going to Philly reportedly, so it was pretty obvious that he was going to be available, so that wasn't a surprise. And the only other one is there's some rumors that have been leaked that Zion might be back. He's working towards making a comeback. I've heard he's done for the season, Pro. So take that for what it's worth. I've read some reports that echo similar, that he won't be back. And then as soon as that report came out, Pro, there were about 10 other ones that came out and said, "Oh no, there's a chance he'll be back." And that's from his agency and people, obviously. But I've heard that he will not be back this season. So if you're a Pelicans fan, I kind of wouldn't want him back this season, to be honest with you. I mean, you'd rather at this point they're starting to play a bit better, see where this goes, really see who else can step up for him, and then get a healthy Zion hopefully next season if he comes back. But that's all we kind of have on the movement front, Pro.
Interesting. Yeah. I just picked Zion up on my fantasy team because everybody dropped him, and I thought maybe he'd come back for a couple of weeks to see what he's got. But I agree with you. I probably wouldn't want to see him, this season because of just, look, they're on a roll right now. I mean, they're 10, they're probably going to finish 9, they're not going to catch 8, but they'll catch 9 for sure. And in my opinion, and why risk it? Why not just sort of like, I mean, if he could finally see his feet for the first time in a year and a half, just go with it and let him just keep working out and then see it
healthy.
And then healthy next year. Yeah, they're in a mix right now. They're in a good spot. I think it's just too much too much publicity with it too. Like they got too much riding on it. They're doing well. Those guys battled through. They got CJ back. They got CJ, rolling with that team, and they got all these young guys playing well. I would ease back, just let the guy work out, and God forbid if they went in the tank and they got to 12 with like 3 games left. Maybe if you throw him out there one game, see where he's at if he's really healthy. But look, right now they're going to be like they're going to be looking at 9. I'm with you. I totally agree with your sentiment. I would just let him chill.
No doubt. Tristan Thompson, Pro, I want to know what he is taking, what he's smoking, man, because we talked about a couple of weeks ago the Indiana Post. He was in Indiana for 3 days, 2 games maybe, and did a big tribute post to his boys in Indiana. Was, I love going to battle with my guys. Did a tribute post. Well, now he's rocked up to Chicago Pro, and as you would remember, Grayson Allen took out Caruso a couple of months ago now. Caruso on a dunk, fouled him hard. He ended up breaking his wrist, which is now further delayed as well. That was one we forgot to mention, but apparently he's not on schedule. He's going to take a little bit longer to come back. But he was asked about that at a press conference, and the quote went like this, bro, shit, take out one of my dogs like that, we're going to have a problem. We got to set the tone. Guys are going to play chippy, let's play chippy. And then further went on to say something about how that's what Chicago's about, that's what we do here. I think he was there, that might have been his 4th day there. I think he was 4 days in Chicago at the time, pro, but I mean, what's going on, man? Is he living a real life Kardashian reality TV show?
Bogues, maybe he went to Gibson's, he took a walk on Michigan, went down a Navy Pier, really felt the city. And you know what? He goes, you know what? This is my home.
Got emotional.
Hey, look, I lived there 10 years. I love Chicago. So maybe he got wrapped up in it, like watched some of those old Bulls tapes. I don't know. Maybe watched, The Last Dance. Who the fuck knows? I thought that was a little bit over the top, though. Come on.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Dude, I saw it. And then I wasn't going to talk about it. Then you sent it through, and I was like, all right, let's talk about it, because it was just like you like one of my dogs. Like, have you even practiced with the team yet, bro?
Fucking hilarious, man.
Oh man, and it's like, yeah. Anyway, that was just a fun quotable. LeBron James, pro. I don't know if you've watched any of their games because you probably don't want to be sick, but the blatant stat chasing at the end of games is it's hard to watch, bro. They've been blown out the last, handful of games. The last 5, 6, 7 out of 10, they've been blown out, whatever the number is, to be exact, I don't know. But they've been down 20 to 25 points in the fourth quarter with 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes left. He's still out there. And it's clear as day he's chasing Kareem's record. He's chasing all the all-time records. But it's just for a great like that, to be basically playing against 10, 11, 12, 13 guys on the roster from the opposite team, because they've cleared their bench because they're up 30, and he's out there hustling on offense like at all costs. And look, it's not a knock. He's in the position to try and break all-time records. I get it. It's just, for me, it's hard to watch. He'll go down as one of the best to ever play the game of basketball. But to watch that, pro, I don't know if you've noticed it or seen it, specifically the New Orleans game as well. They're getting punched, and he's out there, trotting on defense, not trying at all, and then burst on the offense to get a bucket, and you're just like, it's clear as day what's going on. It is what it is, but it's hard to watch a champion do that, pro.
Yeah, there was a movie back in the day called Mr. 3000 with a Bernie Mac, and he was a baseball player that had 3,000 hits, and then he retired for 3 or 4 years, got in the Hall of Fame, or was going to be in the Hall of Fame, and then they found like a scorebook came out of nowhere, and they said, wait a minute, no, we charted 5 hits of yours, not hits, and he's coming back all fat and out of shape. He just came back to get his 5 hits. It just seems a little bit like that. He's gonna get these records, he's gonna get them all. He's gonna get the scoring record. Why? I don't understand this whole big deal. Now, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't watch his show, that barbershop show or whatever he's got. I think I read somewhere today or yesterday where he took offense to he's never, even though he's number 2 in scoring, no one views him as one of the game's best scorers. And maybe he's all about it. Maybe he's just all about getting those points and stacking it up. But yeah, it's a bad look. He'll probably flip it and say, well, I'm competitive and I never quit to the end, and that's why I'm doing it. It's hard to believe that, to be honest with you, when you're down 25 or 20 and, that you're just competing like that. But again, he'll flip it.
He was out there with other guys that were their bench guys.
Did you see him go off on he went off with some media member the last couple of days. I think this guy was sort of killing the Lakers or killing something, and he went off on him. He's been chippy with the media from what I've been reading the last week or two about I You know what? I think this guy was questioning if Clutch was running the team or Pelinka was running the team, and he took offense to it. And that's what it was. That's what it was.
I don't think it's a question.
Yeah,
I think it's
on,
a question.
Man. Yeah, that's
I think it's pretty obvious what's going on.
Yeah.
But I know he basically said as long as I'm on the team, we've got a chance and blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to give you a hint. You don't have a chance with this team. Like, if you get out of the playing rounds, that's a championship for you guys. Because they look horrible.
Bogues, let's get to the fucking play-in first. I'm telling you, it's not guaranteed.
I think they get to the play-in.
Bogues,
but look, Portland.
I'm not fearing Portland at all. But San Antonio's right there. They're only 3.5. 3.5
and the
games.
Lakers, remember I said last week, the Lakers have the second toughest schedule remaining in the league.
And Lawndale's really rested since he plays about 3 minutes a month. So you never know what's going to happen in the second half of the year.
Pop must listen to our podcast, because whenever we mention Free Jock Landale, he gets a DMP the next night or the next 7 nights, and after having a great game. So come on, Pop.
Yeah, come on, man. Seriously, put the guy in.
All right, let's move on to the Ferris X Pro, the WNBA. The New York Liberty were fined for chartering flights during the 21 season. This has become a big topic of discussion again with the whole, male, female sports, all that kind of stuff, equalization, equal pay. As per the WNBA rules, it is grounds that the harshest punishment is the termination of the franchise, pro. That's a bit harsh, but it is termination of the franchise. That's the harshest penalty, and then obviously they can get fines and lose games and wins and all that bullshit. They state the reason for it is the equalization rules. Now, this is a tough one because most people look at this that aren't WNBA fans, and they'll freak out and say this is bullshit because guys get to do it and all the NBA players fly on private jets. That's people that aren't WNBA fans. Once you understand the rules and why they're there, I'll explain it real quick for people. So the WNBA, they have owners just like the NBA. A lot of WNBA teams are owned by, owners that aren't billionaires, that are, they might have 50, 100 million. They're not billionaires. They probably can't afford to be flying their players private. But there are a few teams that an owner might own the NBA team and the WNBA team, or they might be billionaires. So the WNBA has an equalization rule saying that, look, it's an unfair advantage if one or two teams have billionaire owners and they're flying private and the rest of the league isn't. It's clearly an unfair advantage because you're getting much more rest, you're getting in earlier, you're much more comfortable, blah, 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 blah. It's a huge, huge perk to have. That's why the rule is there, because it's not fair to the other teams that can't afford to do it. That's why they've done it. So their thinking is, until we can do it for everyone, no one can do it. That's arguable. You might say, well, what does it matter? If that owner wants to spend that money that he's not going to recoup, he's going to be losing money, should he be able to do it? It's a tough one because the rules of the league, but this has sparked into obviously a separate debate about sexism and whatnot, and why can't this happen? That's why it can't happen. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it should be play on, or do you think they should stick to the rules of the league?
Bogues, I'm a big follow the rules guy. And look, it's clearly stated the league doesn't have the revenue to do that with all the teams. And that's why you have a league. And all these leagues in the United States with Major League Baseball, basketball, football, whatever, it's collectively bargained where all the teams have to follow the same rules, or you're just going to have this sort of, it's not going to be an even deal. And I understand it's so easy to say, well, no one loves female sports and males get everything. No, the NBA sucked there for a while too. As good as the product was, they didn't have the money to do any of those things. Don't forget, when they started out, the NBA started out in their first 20, 25 years, just like the WNBA was doing, they took trains to games. Guys had painting jobs in the summertime. They weren't making money. And that's what it was, because they didn't make it collectively. And then David Stern came around in the 80s, in the late 70s, early 80s, and he marketed the league, and they finally made it profitable, where now everybody could sort of share in that. And the league's not there. So if one team says, oh, we're going to pay for flights, well, what happens to the Minnesota franchise? What happens here and what happens there? So now if I'm a free agent, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going to New York, because they're the only ones who charter. It's a competitive advantage. And I just think that, look, if they're not there financially, if you read that Sports Illustrated article about that whole deal, you see the revenue. The revenue's just not there to be doing that. It's like when when they're complaining about, coach getting $1 million or whatever, players should be getting more than the coach. They should be getting $1 million. No, they shouldn't. Yeah, it's great to say that, but financially, you just can't make it work. You have to go within the confines of what you have in the pot. You can't just be spending this money because now it's just going to fuck the whole league up. Let it build up to something. It hasn't built up to it yet. I like watching WNBA. I'm a fan of it. But if they don't have the money coming in with the TV and with the tickets and everything else, then the sponsorship, then they just can't be talking about it, in my opinion. You could complain all you want, but you have to make that league sellable to people, to watch it, to pay tickets, to sponsor it, get that money, and then get these things that you want over that the males get. But the males had to fucking carry it for a long time to make it to what they're doing today. It's crazy.
Not only that, the charters alone would be more than every team's charter would be more than what the team and league are bringing in. Just on that alone, don't factor in arena costs and salaries. Just the charter alone. So there are ways away from doing that. I did read there was an AFL player here in the Australian Football League that he basically said he's willing to take a pay cut to support the women's league. That's the next conversation. And that's why I said a couple of weeks ago, these NBA players that are out there saying, women need equality like we have it, they should be flying on charters. Well, we're looking at you, buddy. You're the one that can fix it. You share some more of your the collective bargaining agreement, your BRI, to say women get more, they'll get better. So it's actually going to look towards the very males in the NBA to say you can fix that if you want to fix. If that's really important to you, 20% of your salary, cut it, send it down to the WNBA, and the problem will be somewhat solved and on track to what you want. Otherwise, it's just lip service, and that's what we're seeing a lot. We're seeing a lot of lip service. So I think I'm the same. I believe if the rules state that, the rules state that for a reason. Like I said, there's some owners that are more cashed up. That's not fair to other clubs that have to fly on those commercial connecting flights. Some WNBA teams are in cities that don't have direct, I believe, or a bit harder to get to at times. So it is an unfair advantage, but it is professional sport. People argue that it should be, if that owner wants to spend that, they can spend it. It's not college. Why can't they do it? So I understand both sides of the argument, but if I had to call it, I would say stick to the rules and fix it in your CBA. So we'll see how that goes. Brittany Griner has been arrested, pro. This is an interesting one. So playing in Russia, I believe, or flying through Russia.
I think she's playing. I think she's playing. They made it sound like she's playing in Russia.
Playing in Russia, has disappeared since early February. Off socials and whatnot. Apparently, she's pretty active on socials. I don't follow her, so I wouldn't know. But she's and has just gone, missing. Basically, gone dark. It's been reported that she had been found at an airport with, the remnants of marijuana oil or seeds or whatever it was in a vape. So who knows if there was actual active remains of it from after what she'd smoked, or if she actually had bags of it. They didn't really say, but. Not a great time to be in jail if you're in Russia. Not a great time to be in Russia. Number one, not a great time to be in jail in Russia.
As an American, yeah.
As an American, and not a great place to be caught with drugs. They're pretty strict there. So it's going to be interesting that the Players Association has put out a statement saying, like, we're going to try everything we can to get her back. Could she be caught in a somewhat, geopolitical tussle, pro? That's a scary thing with everything going on right now. It's like, remember North Korea? There were a few Americans back in the day that something happened to, and apparently Dennis Rodman got involved and got him back. Remember that a while ago? So this is similar. She could be used as somewhat a PR political pawn. You hope that doesn't happen, and I really hope she gets home safely. But not the best place to be arrested in, pro.
No, remember the third Ball brother got caught shoplifting in China, and Trump had to save him. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty scary, to be honest. And that's another gripe with the WNBA. Like, they're saying, why do we have to play overseas, and why can't we just play in the United States? Like, most of those players, Bogues, the high-end WNBA players that go over Russia and things, they make $800,000 to $2 million, depending on who you are. So, I mean, that's what they do. But that is not a place at this current time with the governments of both Russia and the United States, being an American, getting caught for drugs, and being in Russia at this time. It's That's pretty scary. Hopefully something's going to happen, quicker than, as quickly as possible. But that's pretty fucked up. It's pretty scary, man.
And some blame has to go to Brittany Griner. Like I'm not saying that she's innocent in all this, because you have to know when you're traveling overseas. You got to know the rules. Any country in the world. Yeah. You got to know, especially when it comes to drugs. Like this isn't an issue like in Australia, for instance. You fly here, they're really strict on any kind of food you bring in. Like border control on food is fucking bonkers. But at most, you're going to get $1,000 fine, right? If you brought in like some beef jerky or something, whatever it was. So you got to know the rules, like especially when it comes to drugs. Like just clean your bag out, wash it out under the water. Make sure there's no remnants. Even if it was just remnants that were left in your vape, you can't take that risk. Not in Russia, not in China, not in North Korea. And that's she's got to take that on the chin in a way, but you just don't want her to get hurt or harmed in this.
Yeah, and she's played there multiple years. She needs to. I mean, she obviously should know. She should know what you could travel with, what you can't travel with. I mean, yeah, it's look. I don't want to be splitting hairs here, but this is pretty fucked up. It's pretty fucked up for sure. Hopefully she gets out, but yeah, I mean, if you're I'm nervous as hell anytime I travel outside the country. When I go to China, when I go wherever, I do not fuck with any of their rules. As like much as tomfoolery, I like fucking talking shit with you and stuff. I'm nervous as a whore in church. When I'm when I'm in another country, I'm name, rank, and serial number, and I'm pretty serious about it because I don't. That's pretty fucked up. You don't know what's going to happen with this thing. You don't.
Yeah, we were taught that, like, traveling as a young fellow with the junior national teams, you're young and stupid, oh, yeah, whatever, and your coach or an assistant or a manager would come and say, hey, listen, guys, we're in a different country. Don't go here by yourself, take a teammate with you, don't do this, don't be disrespectful, these are the customs here. And you try to listen as much as you were a young idiot back then, like, oh, piss off, we'll be all right. But you try to listen and hear that stuff because it can happen to you. Like, I've had teammates and friends and family and whatever that have traveled overseas and been caught in some sticky situations, and you just got to know the norms and the cultural norms and the do's and the don'ts. There's a lot of Australians that holiday up in Bali and they're no tolerance on drugs, like full on no tolerance, even just a little leaf, and they set tourists up over there on the street sometimes. The police do for bribes and this and that. Even you rock up to the airport with a little seed, you're in big trouble there. Like you're not getting out for a long, long time, right? So you got to know the customs. So I don't completely think that Brittany's innocent in all this and the sob story, but it's just the timing of it is what we're talking about. It's just questionable, but hopefully she'll be back sooner than later. All right, NBL/Australia World, Dante Exum has re-signed with Barcelona to finish the season. I think he's been playing really well for them. They're really happy with him. Like I said last week's episode, I think he's really starting to get a calmness about the way he plays from what I've seen, patience. He's not all about trying to get stats, and as we've spoken about numerous times, the European teams don't really overvalue stats. They just want that letter at the end that starts with W. So I think that's really good for him and his future career. CJ Bruden. Do you know CJ Bruden, Pro?
I do not. What's going on with him?
He's an American, grew up in America. His father came out here many, many moons ago, played in the NBL. CJ didn't grow up. He grew up in Australia, but his father grew up in America, came out here. Bruden family are really big in Australian basketball. They've been around for decades and decades. And just wanted to give a shout out to CJ. So he's been diagnosed with cancer. So, hope he's the head coach of the Adelaide 36. He's played in the NBL many years, played on an Olympic team, 2 Olympic teams with him, I believe. Really good guy, really, really, really great teammate. But he's in the middle of his rookie season coaching, just being diagnosed. So he's working through getting that better, and we hope that he'll be fine. So we send our support there, Pro. But you never know how quickly you can be diagnosed with these things. So cherish the people you're around, right?
No doubt about that. That's you just wish the best for him and his family, and hopefully he'll get better soon. And yeah, it's nothing to mess around with, man.
Yep. Last one I want to pick a bone to pick with, I don't know who really, Pro, but the Western Australian government, which is Perth, they have the most hardcore COVID restrictions probably on earth. I think they were 600 and whatever it was, 620, 30 days of border locks just opened up finally. So they were flying the flag for COVID still. They still are today, but So what has happened is the NBL didn't know when those borders would open, so they based Perth on the East Coast for indefinite future. Well, it was announced that the borders are now open, so that Perth's gone back to Perth to play a lot of their home games towards the end of this season. Problem being, that their mandates are different to all the other states. They actually strictly require a booster, which is a third shot. Now, what this has done is it's basically made the NBL get on the front foot. They've let all the teams know that, hey, you need to make sure your players have boosters. They need to get them to get into Perth. If your players don't get it and that you don't have enough players to field a team, you will forfeit that game, no ifs, ands, or buts. So basically, at that point, it's not really a choice for the club. They got to push their players to get it. Most players in the NBL have had their double 2 doses, which was required, and most guys, well, not most guys, a fair few people I've spoken to said that's it. I just want my 2, and I don't want to do the booster. So it's a tough spot for a lot of the players. Now, I was on the board of the Players Association, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit. I was once on that board, and there's players that still thought I was on that board that reached out to me and were like, hey, like, what's going on? I'm not really comfortable about getting a booster at this point. I just did my doubles, whatever the reason, not comfortable, don't want to do it. It wasn't a boatload of players, but there are some players. And I said, look, I'm not on the board anymore. So I reached, basically told the PA, this is happening. This player's reaching out. Didn't say who it was. But I'm disappointed in the PA. I think they need to put a statement out. They need to put something out to say that they support the player's choice about what's going on. So this is one state in Australia that has put these mandates on athletes, and the athletes are going to generally do whatever they have to earn their paycheck. Coach will put pressure on them, management will put pressure on them and say, hey, we need you to play, man. It's blah, blah, blah. The other issue is that Perth will most likely be a finals team. So you're going to have home games. They're going to have home games there for the finals. I'm just not comfortable with it, and I had to air it out. And I really wish, the Play Association, Basketball Association, even Australian Football League, their Play Association, they've all just gone quiet. They've gone completely quiet with this. And my point is, if it's one of your players or 100, it does not matter. If it's 1% or 99%, you're paid fees by the players to support them in whatever their problems are. And a lot of these player associations are quick to parrot the current talking points of Ukraine or of whatever's going on in the media. We show solidarity, but when their own players are in this tough situation where they're scared to, what happens if I don't take it? Will I get cut? Will I lose my paycheck? Will this? Will that? And they get really no public support from their very own player association. I think that's not right.
Well, the players don't work for the Players Association. As you laid out, the Players Association works for them, and you can't just buckle on this stuff. You got to come to the table and talk and try to come up with something that's going to be good for both sides. You can't just sort of, I think you're undermining the players in which you try to serve, by going in this direction. I totally agree. I think that there definitely they need to man up and try to come up with a better solution. This isn't in the player's best interest just to lay down with it. You got to at least, fight for this a little bit,
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you're supporting either side. It's just simple as we will publicly support, our players. There are some that have concerns about the booster. There are some that don't. We support either way they go, and for the players that don't want to do it, we'll try to work with the league on figuring out a compromise. But not even that. And I think that's where players are kind of just reached out to me and said, well, why am I paying my Player Association fees? I might be a minority in my decision making or my thought process, but I feel like I'm being forced into it, and my club's, I'm kind of being told it's my choice. It's your choice to take it, but it's not really a choice, bro, at that point, and for one state to outline that law, I honestly think the game shouldn't be there if those laws are like that. It should that unfortunately Perth, like New Zealand, need to just play their home games away, because it's not right. And there will be people saying, well, you should get the booster anyway. And I mean, everyone knows where I stand on that. I'm all about choice, but I just think it's not fair when the rest of Australia aren't in those mandates. So we'll watch that space. I don't anticipate many players being in a position to be able to walk away, because financially NBL players don't make a shitload of money. there's the whole peer team aspect of things. Come on, mate. It's just one more booster, and we need you on the team. So most players are going to do it. I don't think there's going to be an issue, but I hope the Players Association musters a bit of strength. Eat some spinach like Popeye and puts out some sort of statement saying that they are for either players, ones that are happy to take the booster and ones that aren't, and they support them either way and they'll help them out. So we will see where that goes, Pro. All right, stats, useful or useless. Got some good ones this year, Pro. This week. It's been a long year already. Winning seasons in Sacramento.
They had winning seasons in Sacramento?
They did. Rick Adelman, how many do you think he had? Rick Adelman was there for 8 years. How many winning seasons do you think he had?
I feel as though you're setting me up, but I'm gonna guess like 6.
8. He was 8 for 8. Eight winning seasons in 8 years. Do you know how many winning seasons they've had with any other coach in franchise history? So it could be any coach. How many winning seasons do you think? 2. I'll give you a clue. There's been 29 seasons that Rick Adelman has not coached in their franchise history total. 2. 0.
No shit.
0.
No.
That's an amazing stat. I saw that. Useful as fuck.
That's useful.
Rick Adelman's I think is a great coach. I think some of this plays into Sacramento just being a dumpster fire of a franchise for so long. But Rick Adelman, for the knocks that he got back in the day towards the end of his tenure there, like can't win, no defense, blah, blah, blah. They were 8 for 8. So I'd probably argue most people in Sacramento would be like, yeah, we'll take him back. Even if he's in a wheelchair on crutches or 80 years old, let us get Rick Adelman back and just know what one playoff series feels like, especially in that new arena, Pro. But useful or useless?
Oh, that's useful for sure. That's useful for sure. Now a lot of had to do with the talent, and they finally they had good management. They had they had Jeff Petrie as their GM, and they did a good job. Obviously Peja and Vlade and Chris Webber, and the players that they had, Mitch Richmond too. I think it was in that bunch, and then it's just a dumpster fire. Remember the owners? They lost all their money. They were the Vegas guys. I forgot the names. The Maloofs, right?
The Palms.
Hey, I fucking love Casino. The Palms. Just because I hate the strip, so I love staying at the Palms in Summer League because there's nothing
so
there.
Old towards the end, though.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, definitely useful. It just goes to show you, they're so fucked. It's just there's nothing solid foundation about them in the last over a decade. So. Yeah, I'd say useful for sure. Useful it is. All right, next one. There are 510 players in the NBA, Pro, and 129 of them get 10 shots or more a game. 75% of the other players have to do other things, Pro. Useful or useless? It's useful because I fucking tweeted it. It's a good one, though, man. Yeah. That's the first. I think it's useful. Useful as fuck. That's the first thing I'll tell a player at high school, college, or pro that, there's about 3 players that get most of the shots. 75% of the league do not get plays called for them for the most part. They got to survive doing other shit. And yeah, I totally think that's useful for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's basically a quarter of the league get 10 or more shots a game. On a nightly basis. So if you can't guard, if you can't rebound, if you can't set screens, Rick Barry, if you can't do other things to help your teammates, other than try to get 10 or more shots up, or bitch if you don't get them, you're going to be out of the league and you're going to be lighting up China for 40 a night. But that's about it, right? And we see that all the time. So good one, Pro. You're actually bringing something to the podcast. I like it. I appreciate that. Hey. Out of 127, I'm finally fucking getting there. I got my first one in. All right. Steph Curry played the entire fourth in the loss to the Mavs recently. He did not attempt one shot. Third time that's happened to him in the fourth quarter in his career. Useful or useless? Oof. I'd say that's pretty... I'd say... I'm... Useless. Wow, useless. Okay. I mean, I just think it was a freak thing. I think he seemed like, again, I was glancing back and forth at the game, and it seemed like he was fucking pissed. Like Kobe sometimes when he was pissed wouldn't take a shot in a quarter, or just he had something to prove or something. I think it's just sort of one of those freak things. I didn't really, well, what You tell me.
The whole quarter, though. I mean, I don't think he's that kind of guy where he'll just purposely not shoot. But I think I saw Steve Kerr gesturing in that game, move the ball, we're going to move the ball, because I think their ball movement was bad. It was getting stuck a lot, and that's where Draymond plays a big part. So I think there probably were some frustrations there. But, why it's useful for me is, like, if you're Steph Curry's teammate on the floor with him, you got to, after 3 minutes, you're like, hey, guys, like, Steph hasn't really touched the ball much the last 3 minutes. I don't care if you run 8 dribble handoffs or pick and rolls in a row in a 24-second shot clock. Like, let's make sure he takes the next shot, right? That's inexcusable, and that's where Draymond, and my point to Andre Iguodala, he's on the floor then, that's not happening. There's no chance that's happening with him on the floor, right? Because they'll figure something out. I don't care if you set a moving screen and get 3 fouls in a row. Like, get him the ball with a chance to score. He's one of the best scorers in the league, one of the best shooters in the league. So I think it's useful just to show where they're at in their losing streak and something they need to improve on. That's inexcusable. That cannot happen again for them to continue to try to win games.
I mean, you would have thought, literally like Michael Jordan not getting a shot in the fourth quarter. You would have thought how their offense runs, that the guy just touches the ball constantly. Why he didn't take a shot in that fourth quarter. I didn't watch the game that closely, so I can't say, but that's an interesting deal. But, they're on cruise control, that offense. They know it's like the triangle. That split action is like today's triangle, where it's just, it's off of reads. It's not really, in my opinion, not really set. It's just like, all right, the passer is going to, they dictate. He's either going to set the screen for the guy in the perimeter, or someone's going to set a flare for him, or he's going to cut, and there's going to be some action out of that. You would think that just the way watching their offense for so many years, that it's just a normal thing that, all right, let's get Steph a shot either on a dribble handoff, on a cut. He'll set a screen, come back to a pick and roll, something. That's a weird deal that he didn't take a shot in the fourth.
Yeah, and just young guys that don't really, still haven't figured it out, not knowing that would even, they probably wouldn't even known that he didn't take a shot till they saw a stat sheet or someone told them at the end of the game. So you got to know that as a young, and just young. I'm not blaming them. It's they'll get that experience as they grow, but that's something you just got to know. All right, next one. Steven Adams leads the league in offensive rebounds this season with 277. Which is 67 more than the next guy. His 18.0 offensive rebound percentage is the second highest in the last 24 seasons, bro. Useful, useless?
I think it's useful. He's a hell of a rebounder. He's he doesn't really do a lot. Like, he used to score more, and he used to be a little bit better on that end of it, but now he's just totally, especially on the offensive rebounding piece, when I study offensive rebounders, he's in today's game, he's one of the first guys I study because he's so good at rolling, not getting it. And he probably doesn't get it because he's got Moran on his team, but he'll roll it and then he'll just get to the inside on somebody and offense it and box out for the offensive rebound. He's not one of those guys who just gets up and gets it. He's not that much of an athlete like that, but he's so smart. He's like Dennis Rodman, as far as his preparation, doesn't look at the ball when the ball leaves somebody's hand. He just gets to a spot and tries to win that battle of getting inside position. It's pretty cool to watch as far as how he operates. I think it's useful. It just goes to show you how valuable he is on that end of the game. What's your take, Bogues?
Yeah, useful, man. He's a beast down there. He's hard to keep off the board. He out of that dunker position on one side of the board or the other, he'll carve out that whole side. He's very, very Zach Randolph-ish with his positioning and his strength. He's kind of sneaky athletic too, but he's just got such a low center of gravity. I don't think he's a 7 foot. I think he's just 6'11", or maybe he's just 7 foot, but he's kind of really thick legs and torso, and he's just a beast down there. So he's strong. I've had some good wrestles with him, fellow New Zealander, and hopefully he plays for his national team. They could really use him. But definitely a useful stat, and he's providing the paint brunt that I think they need on that team to make a deep playoff push. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. Last one, I had to put a Dallas guy in for our Dallas Crony Pro. Luka Doncic in February, Pro. 34.7 points, 10.3 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 41% from 3 on 9.7 attempts. He's the first player to average 30, 10, and 8 on 40% three-point shooting in a month since the three-point era. Useful or useless?
Oh, you know I'm going useful on that. Shit, that's pretty fucking good. I mean, since he's lost that weight and kept it off consistently, I mean, the guy's been a terror. He's been really tough. He's been really tough. So I would say, I mean, he's been putting up huge numbers and they're winning. He's basically the only big-time player they have and is just getting it to work. I think it's definitely useful. What do you think?
Yeah, useful. He's balling, man. He's playing really, really well. Really, really well. And he's watching a few of his games, just he gets to his spot and he's not the quickest guy. He's strong for a guard and he definitely carves out space with a slight little shoulder or whatever. But just watching him, his ball handling seems to have gotten a little better too. He's really, really putting it down on the floor, crossing people up and multiple crossovers. But he just gets to his spot. Whether it takes him 8 seconds or 2 seconds, he's going to get to the spot he wants to get to. He's going to shoot over you. And he was really impressive in those 2 wins out of Golden State. I watched those 2 games and really, really enjoying the season he's having. So like you said, he's just going to put together a season where he comes into shape from the start, and I think they're probably first in the West. You know, if he did, or at least second behind Phoenix if he came back in a relative decent shape. But he's been fun to watch, and I think the league's in a real good spot with these young superstars and in Luka and Morant coming up as the faces of the league in the next couple of years. I think we're in good hands. There'll be a lot of good battles to watch.
It's funny. He gave me a lot of shit his rookie year about international players taking over the league. And I said, fuck no, they're not taking over the league. But God damn it. He's right. I mean, 3 out of the top 4 or 5 players in the league are international. I mean, with Giannis, him and Jokic.
It's getting like that, yeah.
It's pretty, but him, you know, his ability his size, his vision, and his ability to change speeds. And let's be honest, inside a half court, I mean, anywhere inside a half court, he's a threat to make a shot. Now, he might go 1 for 27, but that one shot will be fucking a dagger. And, you know, he's a dangerous fucking player. But those numbers he's putting up are ridiculous. I didn't even notice him. I mean, I noticed him, but I didn't put it together as far as the averages. That's pretty crazy. All right, fact or fake news, Bogues. I'm going to change one up because we already talked about it. All right? And, yeah, I know I'm pulling a fast one on you. Yeah. But the second one was a question about the WNBA and the chartering flight. We've already answered it. So I'm going to throw one at you. It's not necessarily a softball, but it's all right. First one is, now there's a story in the media that James Harden really left because he thought that they were going to match up with Toronto in the first round of the playoffs. And that's why he really left, because of the vaccine stuff and Kyrie and not having full team, and he was gone. Now, fact or fake news? Did James Harden really leave the fucking Brooklyn Nets because of the fact that he thought he was going to play Toronto in the first round, even though the playoffs are not starting for another 20 games? Fact or fake news?
As hard as fake news can go. Like, well, I don't even know why he'd say that. Number one, like he's trying to make himself, like he's trying to shift the blame. It's Kyrie's fault, like being selfish. Like, so what would happen if Kyrie or KD were hurt for the season? Then what? They're not going to Toronto anyway, right? Like KD's literally hurt or just came back. So if one of your players got an injury, I'm jumping shit. Fuck you guys. Like, that's basically what he said, right? Like. It's fake news. I don't even know who thinks of this shit, whether that was his agent or his PR people, but absolutely horrendous story. Fake news as you can get.
Easily the worst fact or fake news question I've served up since we started the fact or fake news segment. So my apologies, but I had to ask because I thought that story was the biggest piece of bullshit that I've read on Hoops Hype in a long fucking time. I just thought that was complete bullshit and nonsense. All right.
Terrible.
Second question. Now, I think we've covered this before, but Zion, we talked a little bit about Zion tonight. Zion will be moved this offseason by the New Orleans Pelicans. Fact or fake news?
Ooh. I mean, if I was the GM, I would, but
your crystal ball.
Fake news.
Yeah, your crystal ball.
Fake news.
Yeah.
Fake news just because I just don't think they have the balls to do it. I would do it. I mean, I think they've got some great pieces to build around in McCollum and Ingram. I would move him, get something back, get maybe some more young guys back, or with another kind of mid-tier star, a la Dinwiddie, someone like that. With some picks, I would do it. Yeah, so I would do it, but I don't think they will, so I'll fake news it.
I'll fake news it because I think they want these guys to play together at least for a little bit and see what's up. You know how it is, Bogues. Like, and the same thing, which I didn't understand why it didn't work in Brooklyn, where why not just try it out, try it for a full year and see where the fuck you go and see where you're at. Look, they've got all the power in New Orleans. Like, they could move him if they want, but like, they're not in a rush to move him. They could keep him. He's not going to say no. He'd be the first guy ever to say no to a rookie extension, a max rookie extension, since I believe the rule came about. So, like, why not just try them together? You know, Ingram, CJ, him, they're role players. They got all those picks, from LA. Like, why not try and see what what you got? I think they'll keep him.
Has to be probably doesn't need to be at the 5 if you've got Valanciunas actually shooting more threes, actually. But if Valanciunas wasn't on their roster, I think it has to be at the 5. But yeah, with Valanciunas there, I think you can play those 2, 4, 5. But I still think Zion's going to excel in small ball lineups at the 5 spot. But whether he does that or not, who knows? So I would agree with that. Like, I'd like to see them play together with a healthy Zion. I think he's been 1 foot out the door for months on months before this season started. And now with this injury and being overweight and all that kind of stuff, I just don't think he wants to be there. I think he wants to get out. And I think if I was New Orleans, the reason why I would do it is because his value is probably not too high, but it's not as low as it can be. If it gets to a point where he plays that season next year, halfway through says, I want out, it's Philly, Brooklyn all over again, right? It's, Zion's going to hold the cards and then New Orleans is just going to get stuck with whatever they're given.
Yeah, I think sometimes with this stuff, though, Bogues, it's the amnesia if it just that starts rolling and they start winning. I don't know if they're going to be that great with them, but, like, I don't know how good they're going to be with him. Who knows? I'm not a huge Zion fan. I don't think he really shifts the needle for you as a winning player, as your best player. But now if they're sort of like, we talked about Detroit Pistons last week about how they won a championship and they didn't really have a great player on the team. I'm not saying they're a championship team by any stretch, but maybe they excel with everybody sort of doing their part and no one's really your best player. It's just collectively, on the floor together, working together and playing your strengths. But I think Zion with that team, the way he impacts the game in his own way, and with CJ shooting and with Ingram shooting, and then Valanciunas is shooting and things like that, you could sort of do some things. You said the small ball lineup, that makes sense, and then they've got some good role players, and Willie Green's done a good job. I think he's getting better as the weeks go on. So it'll be interesting. I don't think they move him. I think they figure it out. His dad's a piece of work. He wants him gone. I just read a book. Do you know Merle Code, Bogues, by any chance?
I do, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so
with Nike? It was with the Nike when I was there.
So Merle Code, he lived in Chicago for a long time, and he ran those Nike camps that I was at for a long time. And Merle just wrote a book, because he's not with Nike anymore, and he was with Adidas. He came down with that whole scandal thing, serving 3 months in jail, I think, coming up. And he wrote a book about the sort of his career and sort of all the black market shit that happens behind the scenes. And they have they open it up about Zion and his dad and how Adidas had to give his dad like $60,000 to coach a team, created this team with his son on it. And they sort of go into Zion's deal. It's pretty interesting. I would tell anybody to pick it up. I read the thing in like 2 days, but it's pretty interesting, but they go into Zion a lot.
Always pegged you as an audio book type.
Oh, no doubt I am, for sure. I'm not that fucking bright. It takes me an hour to make Minute Rice. It takes me 3 hours to fucking watch 60 Minutes. I'm not very bright. But that one, I just, I like books like that because he mentioned a lot of players that I sort of grew up with as far as like in my career. So pretty interesting shit, but I'm not very bright. You're right over that, Bogues. All right, last one, Bogues. So, as we were talking, it just came over. Woj hit it in the media about there's a debate with the Lakers right now, and it's getting out about bringing Westbrook off the bench. All right, so they're in discussions daily about it, maybe on the hour. Who knows? Forget about if it's going to happen or not, because it's going to happen, in my opinion. Right? So forget about if it's going to happen or not. In your professional opinion, Bogues, the Los Angeles Lakers are a lot better team with Westbrook coming off the bench. Fact or fake news?
Well, fact, I think they'll get better. Because they can't get worse. I've said from the start, you can't, LeBron and Westbrook on the court together, it's just not going to work. LeBron needs shooters out there with him at the guard spots. And it's been like that with him from day dot. You know, he likes to have guys that can shoot the ball next to him. And he's a primary ball handler as well. So is Russ. It was two meteors colliding, right? So I think if you bring him off the bench, when LeBron comes out, you bring him in the 6 minute mark, he plays 2 or 3 with LeBron, then LeBron comes out, then you turn it over, hey Russ, do your thing. Try to get a triple-double, for in your minutes, right? I think that makes sense because it's not what's going on right now is not working. I don't think it's Russ's fault neither. I think it's Pelinka's fault, the Lakers' fault, the front office's fault. Horrible decision-making, horrible recruiting.
Clutch?
Horrible pick of teams.
Clutch's fault?
Or Clutch, yeah, Clutch. Yeah, and Clutch. Yeah. Clutch is obviously a major shareholder of the Lakers. So I think it's all their fault, and I think it's not Russ's fault where he should be punished, but he's going to be the odd man out. They're already scapegoating him like this whole season is his fault, which isn't fair neither. I don't think it is. He has his issues, but I don't think this is his fault. I think it's definitely a roster makeup. So I think they would be a little bit better. But yeah, we'll wait and see. What do you think?
I think it's fact. I think that they'll be better with him coming off the bench. I think he's just not an efficient player, and it's in his DNA. He's never been an efficient player. He needs the ball in his hands, and in his heyday, he was ridiculous with just coming at you and not stopping. He was a bulldog like that, and he was relentless with his approach. And I think he still is, but I think it's his DNA. Like, as a team, the team's not really well constructed. We all know that. We're not going to go into that. But I just think that you bring him off the bench, you stagger them, and then you close with him. But I think you try to get him is like 20. Like, we talked about this with Porzingis last year, in my opinion, was don't have him play with Luka as much as he can. They'll play a little bit, but then you close with him and Luka on the floor. But in the flow of the game, try to maximize most of his minutes away from LeBron. Let him do his thing and just say, hey, get us 25. But the guy's shooting in the gutter. He's almost at 4 turnovers a game. He's not shooting the ball well. Obviously, we see all the shots on the side of the backboard and all that. It's just really a tough deal. The guy's putting up numbers, but he's shooting 43, 28, and 67 with 4 turnovers. You can't, and then playing with LeBron, who needs the ball, and AD, who needs the ball, and the no shooting, the turnovers. He's not very good defensively. But if you just shoot him out of a cannon coming off the bench and say, Russ, do your thing, you're going to close the game anyway. You're going to get your 30 minutes, but we're just going to get it in a different way. I think they're better. I don't know if they're so much better, but I think they are better. You give them a different look. But you know how this shit's going to be, Bogues. Stephen A. Smith and this guy and that guy, and they're just going to be wailing about it for the next 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 weeks, about it, or until it happens. It's a little crazy.
Oh, let's not get it twisted. They're not winning a championship by making this adjustment, and they're not moving into the 8 by making this adjustment. I think it's worth rolling the dice and trying. Shit, it's worth just starting 5 guards at this point. Just start 5 guards and don't start a center. Start 5 centers and don't start a guard. I don't know. Like, try whatever you want to try it. This is the time. You're not, and it's just Vogel's definitely out at the end of this season. He's going to be scapegoated too by reports. So it just sucks to see it all fall apart like this. But it will be interesting to see what they try to do to rebuild even next season, because there's not a lot they can do with that roster. So we'll watch that space. But and then will Russ buy into that? Will he come off the bench grumpy and all that kind of stuff? So there's a lot to watch in that space, and we're going to hear about it, like you said, for the next week, Pro. So we'll watch that. All right, that's episode 56. Thanks to everyone for joining us. We're in the books. Once again, 1 million+ listens. We really appreciate everyone's support at Hoop Consultants for Pro. at Andrew Bogut, at Rogue Bogues. Give us a follow, share, tell everyone about how fun, bad, shit, good this podcast is. And we'll see you next week, bro.